Shock piece because I knew that I would get a lot of reaction, probably mostly negative. I was had a finger wagged at me, in fact, once by a professional Egyptologist who said I made a mistake in doing that, and I said, but this is academic freedom. This is, you know, ideas that should be put out there and discussed. You just made problems by publishing. You make problems with doing this, and we don't need these kinds of problems.
Surprisingly, few Egyptologists took up the challenge. One reason was that Shock's theory came from a geologist and was to do with rocks and weather, whereas Egyptology comes from a different background, dealing with art and culture.
They had no reason to argue with West on and Shock rather on a geological basis, because I was told by different Egyptologists that I asked to respond in some way about this, don't know anything about geology.
But there is one Egyptologist who is prepared to argue about the geology of the Sphinx. Mark Lehner, even though he sticks to the accepted date of 2500 BC, believes that West and Shock have started a useful debate.
I think it's valuable that they point to patterns like the weathering or the erosion on the rock surfaces at Giza, and they're saying this tells a story. It does tell a story. I don't think it tells the story that they wanted to tell.
The story, according to Robert Schock, is that Egypt's weather marked the Sphinx in a much earlier era with a wetter climate. In the hot and dry conditions of today, he says the Sphinx would not weather as it has done. Of course, there is plenty of water in Egypt today, but all of it comes from the River Nile, as it has for the last 4,000 years. In order to dismiss Schock's theory, his opponents have to argue that the deep and dramatic erosion on the Sphinx rock could be caused simply by hot and dry weather. Recently, Egyptologists have proposed a number of rival theories to explain the weathering in terms of today's conditions, without having to go further back in time.
How did the Sphinx get weathered? It's not so much in my mind how did the Sphinx get weathered, but how does it weather? The fact is that the mechanical weathering processes of ancient times and now are probably very similar, and it's the same stone layers, and so we're talking about the same kind of weathering processes. It doesn't take an extra 7,000 years. So it's not like we're looking for a missing element that weathered the Sphinx and no longer is happening. It's going on right now.
Mark Lehner's version is that desert conditions could erode the body of the Sphinx to its present state in just 4,500 years. Now, if that is correct, how does it explain the rock tombs near the Sphinx exposed for the same time? Why would they be weathered less deeply and in such a different way? Another alternative theory gives an answer. The Sphinx was made from crumbly rock.
Then the artist could not make the modeling. They could not make the modeling of the paw or the tail because the Sphinx body is completely deteriorated.
Why was it deteriorated?
It is deteriorated because the rock itself is deteriorated. It is dated back to 50 million years ago.
You're saying it's bad quality rock?
Bad quality rock, that you cannot make modeling in it. You can make something else from bad rock, but not modeling a body of life.
For Robert Schock, the Sphinx temple shows that theory just doesn't work.
Dr. Hawass, in criticizing our hypothesis, has suggested that the stone was extremely incompetent. In fact, he thinks it's such poor quality that when they first carved out the Sphinx, they had to repair it almost immediately. Seismographic studies, however, demonstrate that really the stone is not of that poor quality. It's fairly competent. In fact, we can demonstrate that this temple was built out of massive blocks carved right from the Sphinx enclosure. If the rock was of such poor quality as Dr. Hawass suggests, they certainly could not have carved out these massive blocks, much less erected them into a monumental temple as we see here.
For me, as an Egyptologist, if what Schock is saying, if geologists approve what Schock is saying, still, in my opinion, as an Egyptologist, that the data of the Sphinx is still clear to us.
The burden of proof is on Robert Schock. And I don't think he's done his geological work yet to make the case. For example, one of the primary pillars of his case is that if